Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Before I get to the bill, I certainly would like to appeal to you, Mr. Speaker. I know that the staff in the Parliament always do a very, very good job, but again, I've searched high and low for the amended version of the bill that we discussed this morning, and I have not found it. So I think that in the future, like the member from Beaufort South indicated, I think it would be good if in fact we're going to be amending something and we're only going to receive it on the date, that an extra effort's made to make sure that all members have gotten it, because that certainly would have been very useful. I also, Mr. Speaker, before I speak to the motion, I want to congratulate Julian Alfred. Julian Alfred is a really amazing athlete. Actually, he's from your constituency, member from Castres South. And this young lady who I continue to be very impressed with, and I think we all in Saint Lucian should be very impressed with, that she has now been breaking all the records in the U.S. in the 60 meters. I think that she was probably very grateful that the Olympics got delayed because she ended up getting an injury beforehand. But again, I just want to continue to encourage all our athletes who are participating in women's cricket and who also are under 19 team members who have also been participating. I think very appropriate to really congratulate them and to keep waving the flag for St. Lucia. And I'm very, very appreciative. Mr. Speaker, property tax has been a very vexing issue in St. Lucia for a very long time. And certainly from my own perspective, the difficulties we've had with property tax has really been on how we are going to evaluate the tax. And sadly, we've had the practice in St. Lucia of evaluating property tax on the basis of the value of the property. And many of us will know the experiences that people have, that certainly you can go to an appraiser when you're borrowing money and he praises the value of the land and the house very high, and then when it comes to paying property tax, the same appraiser might find reasons to give you a lower appraisement. And a reason for a lot of persons not paying their taxes because the complication in really understanding what is owed. And certainly my administration was attempting to rationalize that by creating what we call an absolute tax. So in essence, zoning the country, Mr. Speaker, and depending on the level of facilities that existed in your community, based on the size of your lot and the value of your land, that an absolute fee would be made. I mean, just to give you a number, Mr. Speaker, there's approximately 66,000 households in St. Lucia. And if you assume 30% of those households are below the poverty line, there's approximately 40,000 households that should be making some kind of contribution to the property tax. And if you just simply took that at $500 on average, meaning that some people would pay more and some people would pay less, we're talking about $20 million. So I also found it very interesting, Mr. Speaker, that in the manifesto of the Labour Party, it's very, very clear. In fact, it was such an important issue, it's the number one thing, page 24. It's the number one point where it says that very categorically, remove the current property tax on residential buildings. The Minister of Finance is absolutely correct that we had made a similar promise. In fact, we promised that we would do it for 3 years, but because of COVID, we felt the need to extend the property tax, and also we were hoping to introduce a new tax. I continuously hear in this House conflicting messages, Mr. Speaker. So today I heard the Minister of Finance speaking about payables of $150 million. Well, that amount was mentioned multiple times in this House. In fact, when we talked about financing the deficit that happened because of COVID, I mean, you're talking about your revenues dropped from approximately $105 million a month to as low as $45 million. But on average, $55 million in the first year. I believe that last year we did somewhere closer to $65 million, and I'm hoping that those numbers are going up. And we said that the deficit was funded by the $320 million that was borrowed from the international institutions. I never said that. So if I show it to you, it's not a problem. Okay. So $300 million of the deficit was funded by the monies that we got from the international institutions. CDB, IMF, and World Bank. I'll be very happy to make Hansard a report available to you. So I also said that we extended the overdraft facilities the government had. So overdraft facilities were extended with the local banks, and also the overdraft facilities were extended by the ECCB, not only for Saint Lucia, but for all of the country islands. And that the remaining part came from payables. And that our payables went from $30 million on average to as high as $150 million. If I'm not mistaken, it made it as high as $170 million. Now, I'm saying this because 3 months before the election, we actually had a budget. And all of those details were actually in the budget. And those details were actually in all the remarks and in my rebuttal, everything was provided. And yet still, the new administration in opposition promised the people they're going to give them the property tax exemption period. And again, I have to say to St. Lucians, there's a phrase I believe that the Labour Party uses is, my brother, watch your bread. I want to say to St. Lucians, you need to watch your bread. Because I believe, Mr. Speaker, there are many more things that to come. There are many more things to come, Mr. Speaker, where we would have found that the government would have made similar promises in other areas. And I believe it's going to be questionable in whether they can deliver those things. I am sympathetic to them, but to continue to convey to the people of St. Lucia that you did not know. Okay, bananas in France. You know, that's one of the oldest things. So you're telling me, so Mr. Speaker, you're telling me that a government had the ambition of being able to market bananas to France, made every attempt to do that. And because of circumstances beyond our control, it did not happen. But Mr. Speaker, I'm talking about in the manifesto. It says, remove the current property tax on residential residential buildings. It's clear and categorical. So, Mr. Speaker, so all I'm saying to you is that, again, like my member from Choiseul, I absolutely support this. I think that the economy has not recovered enough. I believe that people on household income is still down to the extent that we should do this. I want to applaud the government now for at least the minister coming out truthfully and saying that his position on removing property tax is going to be revised. And so therefore, I think that there are many other things which are included in this manifesto. Sorry, Mr. Speaker? He didn't say what? That he was revising. He said it's under review. Mr. Speaker, the member of finance just said that he is going to take time during this year to review the property tax along with income tax and corporate tax. I believe that that's what he said, but certainly Mr. Speaker, review means that there's a possibility you'll stop it. If not, okay. So, Mr. Speaker, if members on the opposite side now are insisting that they're not going to stop it, then why go through the facade of not making the change right now? Okay? Mr. Speaker, okay? So I'm just saying to you, I've given you the out. The member said that he's under review. Mr. Speaker, the member from Castries East said it is under review. Okay, this was a campaign promise. I'm happy if he's going to say that there's consideration of not doing it. Members on the opposite side said I'm misquoting them, and that in fact they're not saying that they're going to proceed. Is that what you're saying? So I'm saying if you're going to proceed, then proceed. But if you're not going to proceed, I think that when we talk about keeping yourself accountable and responding to the people's needs, there's a plan. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to sit down and explain bananas to France. Wait, say it now? So every attempt was sent to bananas to France. In fact, the meetings, Mr. Speaker, through you.
Remember, do not be derailed. Member of Microsoft, do not be derailed by the taunts. Proceed with the...
You know, Mr. Speaker, I no longer consider them taunts. I've now learned that when persons say things, because you know there's a very interesting story, Mr. Speaker. And it was a gentleman who was taken to court for defamation. And the judge listened to the arguments, and the gentleman who made the allegations against the other person could not see anything wrong in what he was saying. So the judge said to him, I want you to go home and write down on a piece of paper all the things that you said about that individual. So the next day, the gentleman came back to see the judge, The judge says, now I want you to take that piece of paper and tear it up into small pieces. And I want you to throw it outside the window of your car when you're driving home. So he did that. The following time they came to court, the judge said to him, okay, I would like you to go and find all those pieces of paper. And the gentleman said, I cannot find them. The wind's blown them all around. They're all over the place. He said, that is the point of when you make these kinds of statements. So today, I've decided, not today, but very recently, that I don't take these things lightly when members of the opposite side make suggestions, make innuendos, and make allegations. So I will intend to refute all of them as they come up. So, Mr. Speaker, in the case of the bananas, so we can put that, because, you know, we've said it many times, but again, I've realized with the members on the opposite side, Mr. Speaker, sometimes it takes more than many times. It takes a lot of times to repeat the same story, because they have a habit of just saying it over and over again.
Except member from Mico South, you are responding to something that is not on the record. Nobody made that allegation in a contribution.
Mr. Speaker, did they not just ask me to make an explanation?
Well, I didn't even hear that,
Okay.
because it's not on the record.
Well, Mr. Speaker, if you did not hear, then I will choose again not to respond to it.
But you-
at the
yeah.
appropriate time,
Because
member from Mico
you are-
South South, I'll be very happy to explain the situation with the bananas. But meanwhile, I think members on the opposite side have many more serious problems to deal with. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.